Welcome back to my channel. I hope this video is going to record. I'm doing something a little different. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be talking about a series that I love. I'm going to do a book review. And unfortunately, it's going to be a spoiler-filled review because this series is one that I just absolutely love and have read several times. And each time I read it, I pick something new out of it. And that is, of course, the Aragon series, but more importantly, the final book of the series, Inheritance, or The Vault of Souls. I have not read Christopher Paolini's short story collection, but that is one that I am planning on reading soon. But if you would like to hear my thoughts on a spoiler-filled review of this series, keep watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to get more content. And let's move forward. If you haven't read the series and you're like, I don't want to be spoiled, then I would say maybe don't watch this video because I'm really going to be getting into the meat of the story and what I get from it each time I read it. Okay, so if you're still watching, you have either read the Inheritance cycle or you are you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to see what this guy says about it and his thoughts. So if you're watching, you are interested in seeing what I have to say about it. So let's get into it. The book starts out basically with the Varden attacking one of the major the cities in the empire. They're trying to take it over so that they can march toward Urbane to get rid of King Galbatorix. The Dragon Rider King, who's been enthroned for like over 100 years since the fall of the Riders. It's just a little bit of history, but let's continue. So there's a long, drawn-out battle. One of the biggest pieces of information that I want to talk to you today about this battle is there at one point is a man who comes out of the castle keep on a horse, and he is riding towards Saphira. That's Aragon's dragon, if you haven't read the series. And he is riding toward Saphira with this green lance. I think it's believed called a Doth Dart, if I'm saying that correctly. And it's described as a green lance with a faint green barbed blade with an aura of light around it. So that kind of tells me, the reader, that it's got magic, and of course it does. It's Aragon. So Aragon freaks out and begins to cast a spell to basically stop the rider, and the elves with him they're quicker, so they're not able to stop the lance. The lance goes into her, but it thankfully only goes into muscle. And so it ends up, being okay. The rider, the elves cause the mosaic tiles on the ground to shift. A rift opens up, and the rider is the horse rider. Because he is being sustained by magic, him and the horse are just hanging there. And one of the elves, Bloodgarm, he jumps on the elf and basically tears open his throat because he's aggravated because it's Saphira, and all of the elves regard Saphira and dragons in general with a kind of a religious like zeal. It is their duty to protect the dragons. So that go they are able to kill the horse rider. They're able to and as that man dies, there's an explosion in the building that kills the magician who's hiding out inside, and basically it causes the building to the front of the building to explode. And they are able to get this lance out of Saphira, and while that's happening, the castle wall explodes, and Roran, Aragon's cousin, he's now in charge of several battalions of a battalion of warriors, and he is behind the eaves of the house. And as the wall falls, a bunch of men are crushed, and Aragon doesn't know. He freaks out again, and he's like, "Oh no, I don't know what's happened." So he takes off and doesn't realize that Arya, the elf, that kind of travels with him, is accompanying him, and he runs through the keep and runs through the castle. Has to get past a few men, but he just pretty much, with his strength, kind of punches one man, and he flies up. He gets hit so hard that he flies up in the air and then falls to the ground dead. And so he runs through the castle and gets to where where the wall was, like at the keep where it fell, and he finds Roran. He's battling with like one man who was one soldier who escaped the fall, and he's pretty exhausted, but he gains the upper hand, and then looks over, and like as he looks over, he like faints. So they realize that nobody else has survived from the Varden from that fall, in that battalion, and they go to find the lord of that city. They find him, put him to sleep, and the Varden win the day. And then the Weircats, which if you've read the rest of the series, you know that the Weircats are revered cats that they're how do I describe them? They're like shapeshifters, basically. They can turn from cats to humans, but they're not. I believe that they're not from either race. They're kind of something in between. And so they join forces with the Varden, and they march on to basically toward their next destination, which is Drosleona. And the story kind of flip-flops around. I actually kind of like this story arc where you see different things kind of happening throughout the story. It kind of, not only does it draw it out, but it also allows for more characters to expand. So Roran, right before the Varden takes off to Drosleona, or starts marching toward Drosleona, Nasawada, the leader of the Varden, commissions Roran to go with a small group of men to Aros, which is a city that the Varden have been trying to capture for some time, and the captain has proven to be incompetent, and Nasawada's just impatient. She wants to get the siege settled. She can't send Aragon and Saphira because Aragon and Saphira have to stay with the Varden because they don't want to give Galbatorix or the Empire the notion that Aragon has taken off, because it will be easy then for Aragon to or for the Empire to defeat the Varden, if he's gone. So they got to kind of keep him close. So Roran takes off. He takes command and destroys Aros. One of the major things I wanted to mention about the Aros fight is that the magician that Roran brings with him, it's a man that Roran's traveled with and fought with before, and he is unfortunately killed fighting another magician. The city falls shortly after, and Roran Roran gets shot in the shoulder by an arrow, and the dispossessed captain, Brigman is his name, actually cuts the arrow out of his back. So even though Roran kind of dealt with him and had to kind of punish him a little bit for his failure, Brigman actually redeems himself a little bit in Roran's eyes, and actually when Roran leaves Aros to rejoin the Varden, he actually, with Naswata's permission, gives command essentially of the captured city to Brigman. So he kind of has a story arc. So I kind of like that. So Roran returns, and the siege of Drosleona is ongoing. The Varden continue to fortify, and they're forced to kind of wait because Thorn is, who is Murtag's dragon. And if you have not read the rest of the series, Murtag is another dragon rider. Read the rest of the story, because I'm not going to go into Murtag's story. I can do a Murtag video if that is something that you'd like. If you want me to do a Murtag video, then leave it in the comments, and I will I'll kind of look back through all the stories and kind of piece all the books and piece his story kind of back together. I think that would actually be kind of a fun one to do, so I'll kind of consider it. So the Varden are waiting for a sign, basically, and Aragon and the rest of the command of the Varden are kind of at an impasse, and they're just trying to figure out what they might be able to do, and tensions are running high. During this time, the dwarves, they join the Varden. They had been after the end of Eldest, which is the second novel. The king Hrothgar, he died. He was murdered, and so the dwarves had to go back to Trondheim to bury him and choose their next king. So the dwarves have returned by this point. By the time the Varden reaches Drosleona, and so they, like the dwarves, because they know, dwarves, they in all the stories, they know about stone work, they know about a building, and so they're a very valuable asset. And King Oric, the city is pretty much impregnable, and so they're trying to figure out ways to figure out what they can do. So at one point, King Oric is talking to Aragon, and he says, my men, they're ready to fight, but I'm not going to fuss over them like hens, and so I'm going to relax, and they should too, because battle can't be joined yet. I like Oric's demeanor. He's really he's a foster brother to Aragon, because he'd been adopted as a dwarf, and because of that, they're kind of like brothers, in a sense, which I really enjoyed. So the Varden, they end up having one of the scholars, Jode, who is another prominent character in both Aragon, the first book, and Eldest. He is a scholar, and he's reading a bunch of scrolls to try to kind of figure out what Drosleona's defenses could be, and he's trying to figure out if somehow the city can be breached, because they can't take the walls because Murtaugh's dragon Thorn, he's laying on top of the ramparts, and he's watching the Varden. So they can't march on him. So Jode finds a passage in one of his many books that he has, and takes it to Nasawata and all the leaders. King Orin, who is the king of the Surdans, an ally of the Varden. Arya, who's the ambassador to the elves. Aragon, obviously Dragon Rider. Nasawata, the leader of the Varden. King Halfpaw, the leader of the Weircats, and Nargarjvog, the leader of the Urgles, who have joined forces with them as well because they were tricked and want to strike back at Galbatorix. So they are having a conclave, and they're trying to figure out the best way to move forward. And Jode, there's a fair bit of dialogue that I'm not going to really get into, but essentially they find out that there was a network of tunnels that was designed to carry waste out of Drosleona. And so after much discussion, it's decided that Aragon, Arya, Angela the herbalist, Werden, I think is how you say his name, one of the elves, and Solumbum, I think that's all that went, are going to go, and they're going to open the gates. So they go, and after walking, they do find the tunnel, and after walking through several tunnels, they come to a round, a huge chamber, and it's while in that chamber that they're attacked by a bunch of black garbed men who can't feel pain. So there's a battle between them. Angela is dragged off, and Aragon and Arya, Arya and Werden, the elf, as they're running toward a dark room. It's described as a dark room with a patent disc in the center with amethyst ringing the outer edge of it. So they're running, and Werden gets trapped in spikes and is killed. And Arya and Aragon, they run into the room, and Aragon, he's running so fast that he essentially he's going to run into the disc. So he jumps over it, basically, and as he jumps over it, he ends up passing out. Arya, it doesn't say, but Arya must have done the same thing, because Aragon comes back consciousness, realizes that he's been chained to the disc, and they're chained arms and legs, and then the priests of Helgrind, which is the religion that they the religion of self-mutilation that they practice by Helgrind, which is outside Drosleona, they come down and basically make a sacrifice to the Razak, who Aragon and Roran, they had killed in the previous book. So the belief is that Aragon and Arya are going to feed the Razak, who are actually turn out to be the gods that the priests that they worship. They're saved by the fact that Angela, who is not killed, is not, isn't, it doesn't say she's hurt, but she isn't killed. She is rescued by Solumbum. Then they go and they rescue Aragon and Arya. And after healing wounds, they go to find the priests, which they locate them. And there's like there's just a lot of fighting throughout this book. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of like every fight scene, just because we would be talking here when the sun comes up tomorrow. So let's move on. So they capture Drosleona, and it's shortly after that another major plot point happens. Arya and Aragon, the night after they capture Drosleona, are kind of relaxing in Aragon's tent and just kind of, they've been fighting since the Burning Plains, but they've really since Feinster at the end of the third book. They're just like, we need some time to relax. Well, it's during this relaxation that Thorn, Murtagh, and a group of men show up to capture Nasawada. And Aragon essentially doesn't make it in time, and they're not able to stop Thorn, and Nasawada is taken away. Aragon becomes the leader of the Varden, and he's just at this point extremely overwhelmed and extremely like, what am I going to do? How am I going to go on without Nasawada to lead? And it's really, this part of the book is a lot of discussion and introspection. Presently, it's decided that he needs to go and find a way. He can't defeat Galbatorix the way that he is. He needs more strength. He needs to understand himself more. And there's actually a big piece of this book that I'll touch on, but I mean, definitely go and read it. But it's decided that Aragon is going to go to Vrowengard Island, which is the old ancestral home of the Riders. This is where it's always been said, like throughout the books, that Galbatorix set upon the Riders and destroyed them and became king of the land, and that's where that big battle happened. He he killed the Riders at Illyria, which is now Urbane, then went to Vrowengard and killed the Riders there, and utterly, he believes, wiped them from existence. So Aragon, he feels, because he was given some advice long ago from Solumbum, the Weird Cat, when the time comes and your power is insufficient, and I'm quoting the book, when the time comes and your power is insufficient, look under the roots of the Manoa tree, and also speak your name to open the Vault of Souls. And Aragon, he's never known what this is, like what the Vault of Souls really contains. So they go to Vrowengard, and they realize that they have to actually discover who they are. There's a big piece of this series that if you know your true name, you know everything about yourself, and you've really like sat and thought about yourself and thought about who you are and thought about your life, and really come to terms with who you are. And some of it might be okay, and some of it you might not like, but all of it is, if somebody knows your true name, like if they know really who you are, they can utterly control you, and they know everything about you. And so Aragon decides to go and he needs to at Vrowengard, he needs to discover this true name. Same with Saphira. Dragons aren't inherently born knowing their true name. And there's kind of a long drawn out process where he actually does discover his true name. And during this process, while this is happening, the book goes back to Nasawada and shows that she is indeed captured and taken to Urbane, and she is a captor of Galbatorix, and we actually get to meet Galbatorix really for the first time. There's a little piece in Brissinger in the or in the end, excuse me, where he is speaking, but we don't have his, like, what he looks like. And so this is really the first time when he's with Nasawada and torturing her essentially, and trying to get him to swear her allegiance to him, that we actually get to meet him. And so this was kind of like the biggest climax point. So the book is going to flip-flop, and I'm not going to go through all that, but the book is going to flip-flop. And basically, while this is happening, the Varden is still marching to Urbane, and there's little scenes that happen between different members of the Varden, but go read the book, because it isn't like I said, we'd be here talking forever. So anyway, Nasawada is anything from being burned by irons to having visions foisted upon her, to just having to listen to the king, talk to her and try to beguile her in the way that he can, in any way that he can. It is quite thrilling to actually, for me anyway, it was really thrilling to actually hear the description of him trying to beguile her. So I enjoyed that. And we find out that Murtagh during this time convinced Galbatorix, who initially just wanted Nasawada to be killed, convinced Nasawada to be captured, and so that he would lure Aragon, or that would lure Aragon, they thought, closer to come quicker to rescue her. But also because, and here's a spoiler, Murtagh has actually fallen for her. He's kind of changed a little bit from the bloodthirsty murderer that he's first portrayed to be, Morzan's son, and person who just kind of acts rashly, to a really thinking person, and I like that. Really gives him a story arc, and Christopher Paolini has said that he's actually going to write a 5th book, and I haven't read The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm series of short stories, Tales from Alagasia, or whatever it's called, and that is my next read it's not the same series, but with his books that I plan to read. Haven't done it yet. Anyway, so there's a lot of flip-flop here, but it's done really well, and during part of this, Nasawada, when Galbatorix is not with her, Murtagh actually comes alone and talks to her, and really is trying to find a way to free her. He realizes that capturing her wasn't a good idea, but killing her would have been even worse, and so he's really doing all he can to save her. So that said, we have him talking with her and her talking with him, and she eventually learns to trust him, and that is what gives her the strength to resist Galbatorix's ways. And so yeah, so then we go back to Aragon. We left Aragon with trying to find his true name. So Aragon, at this time, he learns his true name along with Saphira. Glader, who's with them, already knows his true name because he's lived for a very long time, and he's already kind of found out who he is. So Glader doesn't have to do that, essentially. So um, they go to the rock, and inside there's a vault, like a cavern, and they realize that the race of eggs and dragons, and here's another spoiler alert, the race of eggs and dragons have not actually passed into the void. Galbatorix had 3 dragon eggs when he took over as king. Saphira's, Murtag's, and a green one. And so Murtag then, excuse me, oh my gosh. Murtag's red dragon and Saphira's blue dragon egg, and then there was a green, unknown at this point, dragon egg. So they find in the vault that there's hundreds of dragon eggs and Eldunari. You learn about Eldunari, and that is what allows a dragon to exist after his body is killed. And the rider who uses the Eldunari can give the basically strength to the rider. So anyway, so there's tons of Eldunari, and it's decided that these Eldunari are going to go with Aragon to defeat Galbatorix. The time is right, and we're not going to hide anymore. We're gonna come out of hiding. We're gonna do this thing. We're gonna get rid of the king, and hopefully either we're gonna die trying, and the race of dragons is gonna pass into the void, or we're gonna be successful, and it's gonna work out, and we're gonna be things are gonna move on. So by use of a spell, the Eldunari hide. They're not all in Saphira's saddlebag, which would have been probably pretty dangerous. But excuse me. Okay. Sorry. So then they travel back to Urbane, where the Varden have now arrived at the outskirts of Urbane. Aragon calls a council of all the important... So the elves have joined them. So Queen is Linzati, Arya, several other elves, but King Orin, King Oric, Roran, his cousin, and I don't honestly... I think that's it. Of the people that were there. And it's decided that Aragon's going to basically reveal the existence of the Eldunari, but he wants people to swear in the ancient language to basically not speak of it, because it's their greatest advantage over the king. So they do, and they reveal themselves, and so there's like much discussion between them, and many of the elves, like all of the elves, are able to greet them like old friends, and it's kind of a great reunion piece. So then the battle ensues, the great battle. So the night before the battle starts, we actually get to see Shrukin, Galbatorix's dragon, because Galbatorix sends Shrukin out to basically provide a challenge to the Varden, and really trying to scare them. I don't know, like into fleeing, or just saying, hey, you know what? Here you go. Like I'm here, basically. And so then the next day, Elva goes with Aragon. Elva is the little baby girl that Aragon and Saphira had blessed and accidentally cursed in the beginning of Eldest, and it gave her the power basically to be a shield for misfortune, and to be a shield for basically to take on people's pain. So they need to use her to go through Galbatorix's castle, because there's like traps and things. So there they go, and they do this. She agrees to come, and they find the king, and he this is the climax basically of the book, in my opinion, because you have waited and waited and waited as the reader to meet him and for this final confrontation. And after a lot of discussion, it is decided that Aragon and Murtagh are going to fight. Galbatorix wants to see basically who the best warrior is. A little clip from the book. However, since you so wish to fight, I will grant your request. Aragon's hope vanished as Galbatorix continued, but not with me, with Murtagh. I wish to know which of you is the better warrior. It would be interesting, too, to see brother fight brother. No, Aragon said, not brother, half-brother. Brom was my father, not Morzan. Galbatorix appeared surprised. Then this will be all the more fitting. The son of Morzan pitted against the son of Brom. Fate, it seems, does indeed have a sense of irony. Come, Murtagh, show yourself. Join Aragon and let us see which is the better warrior. So there's this fight that then continues or starts, and during it, Aragon realizes that Murtagh is fighting differently. He's not fighting for himself anymore. He's fighting, for something else, and it's not really even Thorn. So, Murtagh, realizing this, Aragon's like, I'm gonna let him take his victory, and then I'm gonna grant him his victory, and then I'm gonna take my own because I still need to defeat Galbatorix. So, essentially, Aragon wins, and then Galbatorix and him, because Murtagh turns against the king, because he's able to, because he realizes that him and Thorn have changed, and that actually changes his true name, so Galbatorix doesn't have any control over him anymore, and he's able to strip him of a lot of his wards, which allows Aragon and Saphira and Thorn, actually, so Saphira and Thorn actually pounce on Truchen, and so there's a fight. Arya has the lance, the Doth Dart that they brought, and long kind of drawn out battle. Go read the book. I don't want to give it all away. They defeat the king, and then later on there's a scene shortly after that. Aragon and Murtagh, they're talking by a river because he's talking about leaving. He's like, Thorn and I, we need some time. We need to go away to kind of recoup. Galbatorix has done a lot of bad stuff to us, and we're not ready to be around people. So Aragon, says his farewells, says that he'd always be welcome wherever they settle, and that they really Aragon and Saphira. They want to really get to know Murtagh, and they are half brothers. So it really was a really touching and fitting moment. So then there's a lot of, again, back and forth. Nasawada becomes queen, and there is a lot of there's just a lot of back and forth. They have to rebuild the kingdom. Let me go back to a major point in the battle, though, that I didn't talk to because I wanted to talk about Galbatorix. There is a point where Queen Islanzadi is killed, and they along with Arya and the elves and Arya they had rescued the green dragon egg, so they take the green dragon egg. And in a letter that Arya had left for Aragon, explains that because Saphira hatched for an elf, and Thorn hatched, or excuse me, since Saphira hatched for you, a human, it is only right that an elf should be this dragon's next rider if the dragon in this egg agrees. I hope that you do not believe that I have acted presumptuously, as I have spoken to Glader and the other Eldunari, and they agree. So I hope you have not thought that I was presumptuous of my own race. Aragon doesn't know when she's going to return. She does, like, half a year later, and we realize that she's actually become queen and the new rider. The dragon had hatched for her. That's why she had been so silent. So again, another big spoiler. And Aragon and Arya, as they're talking, the dragons are kind of getting to know each other. And really kind of a touching scene. Aragon and Arya actually finally exchange their true names, which is like the ultimate bond. Like if you know someone's true name, like I said, you know like everything about that person. It's not all about power and dominion over that person. It's more about, if it can also be used as like understanding and knowing that person's every like being, every thought. Well, not thought, but like that person intimately. So they exchange their true names, and it's during this time that Aragon realizes that he loves her. I mean, he's always had a thing for her, but he realizes that he loves her. And he asks her if she would come with them, because it's the prophecy comes to pass that has been talked about throughout the entire series. He is fated to leave Algasia and never return. And so she says, would you give up charge of the eggs? Because Aragon had asked her if she would give up her crown. And neither one of them can really give up their duty. And Arya has always been one to kind of put duty first. And that's actually something that, again, I've always admired, of her. So they decide that they're going to part ways. But they have a few days, or they have some time together, because Aragon still needs to take care of some stuff before he goes. So he goes to Nasawada and explains to her that he has to go. Nasawada's upset because he wanted Aragon. She wanted Aragon rather to lead the magicians, because she believes that they need to be kind of policed. And Aragon's kind of like, I can't really take charge of this because I have to leave. I'm sorry, but I believe that you're going to find the best way of doing this. So so there is that. There's kind of a really touching scene when they leave. Roran decides that he and Katrina are going to go with them, like, on the first leg of the journey, because he just really doesn't want to leave his cousin. So Aragon leaves, says goodbye to Nasawada and everybody, and it's a really, really heartfelt moment. When I first read it, I had to stop the book several times, basically throughout the end to this book, because there's no shame in admitting it, I just lost it, because I'd been waiting, like so many people, I'd been waiting and waiting and waiting for the new book to come out, and it just, I was like, no, it can't end this way, and you're just sad. So, Roran actually gets to go to Trondheim and to Elismera, places that his cousin Aragon has gone throughout several books, and he gets to see some of what Aragon got to see and experience. So, that was actually a really cool moment, and I'm glad Christopher Paolini actually did that. So they go back. Aragon during this time, Aragon, Saphira, and the Eldunari. Some of the Eldunari go back to Verongard to get the rest of the eggs. So they once again cast that same spell to hide the eggs and the rest of the Eldunari, and they leave to head for Dueldenvarden, where they basically meet with Arya, Roran, and Katrina, and they have a feast, and they hang out for several days, and actually a couple weeks. They're there. They're there. They are there. There we go. And then it's time to leave, and as a surprise, Arya says that she's going to accompany Aragon, and on the first part of his journey, she wants to kind of see him off. And so this is the last really major scene of the book. And since it's already been kind of hinted at so many times, if you have read the book, he's said he's had to leave Algasia and never return. So he actually goes to Ceres, which is an outpost of the elves, and the dwarves meet him there with Oric, and he's like, you don't think I'm gonna let my foster brother leave without saying a proper goodbye, do you? And so they have a feast, and they hang out for the night, and then they fall to talking the next day. And then, Oric tries to get him to stay another day. Like, oh, please, stay for another, day of song and feast, and let's celebrate, And Aragon just says, no, if I stay another day, I'm never going to leave. So Oric gives Aragon a chest of gold, and they leave on horseback, and they head out down a trail to the ship, and it's the same ship that had been described in Aragon's vision. A big ship with it's a white ship. Described as proud ship. And Aragon actually gives Roran the chest of gold and tells him to rebuild Carvajal with it, as it had been destroyed, if you've read the series. And so he says rebuild Carvajal, and he says he'll do it. And he says farewell. And Arya and Aragon, they turn to each other. Excuse me. Arya and Aragon, they turn to each other, and they say each other's names, not their true names, but their names. Here. Arya, Aragon. Aragon looks at Arya. Stay with me. Arya looks up at him, the hood of her cowl pulled. I cannot. Stay with me until the first curve in the river. Aragon holds out his arm, and Arya loops her arm through his, and they walk on the ship together. The elves follow behind them. and the gangplank is pulled away. As they cast off and sail down the river, Roran standing on the shore, throws back his head and lets out a cry. It's deep every time. Not saying
level.
They don't. So there's there's that, and then, so they don't really say anything to each other, like, but they're just kind of standing there, arm in arm, and then Aragon like turns to Arya and pushes back the hood of Arya's cloak, and basically they whisper their true names to each other, and then Aragon goes to say something, and Arya puts her hand, like, stops him from speaking, and then raises her hand. Fiernan comes out of the sky and grabs him. Aragon looks on as she flies off, and really, that's kind of the end of the book. They're sailing off into the unknown, and like at this point, and you can probably tell I'm like, no, I'm even talking about it. I've heard about the Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, and I've read some reviews, and this video is not about that. So again, I'm gonna read that, and if you want me to do a review, I will do that. And so it's not as painful as it used to be, but it's still really sad because you just watched your favorite character sail off into the unknown, and before the Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, well, you just don't even know anything about, like, what's happened to him. So really a great book, and I'm not talking about the whole series here as a whole, and I can do other reviews of all the other 3 books if that's something that you want me to do, because they're great reads. I mean, seriously, they are great reads. I read them over and over and over, and like some people, especially some people in my family, they're like, why do you know how it goes? I've actually picked out a certain, like, small tidbit every time I've read every book. Each time that previously eluded me, either because as I'm sitting there listening or reading, my thoughts might wander a little bit and I miss something, and then I might catch it the next time around. And why not reread the series that you have heard over and over and over? You own them, and you if you own the book, or if you've bought the book, you own it, you spent money on it, so why not enjoy them over and over? So really a good book. A 5 out of 5 for the entire series, but definitely 5 out of 5 for every book. And just a really good read. So that's it for this video. Really, really long-winded, I know. My apologies to not being on YouTube for a while. The holidays are upon us. Christmas is upon us soon, and Thanksgiving was of course last month. Things have just been absolutely busy. I am going to probably in the new year, I'm going to work on some more videos. I'm working on some new content, as well as another kind of big project right now. Not really necessarily anything to do with YouTube. I might actually do something with that project on YouTube, but I'm not sure yet. But thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have enjoyed this video. And until then, see you next time.
Take picture. Take picture. Take picture. Take picture. Viewfinder. Image. Double tap and hold to adjust. Viewfinder. Image. Adult child. Map. Viewfinder. Map. Tilde. People. Adult. Viewfinder. 54 minutes. Stop recording video. Take picture. Stop recording video.